Thanks for joining us this afternoon on Indivisible with John Stubbins. I'm your host, John Stubbins. Welcome, America. You know, New York is really sliding into utter chaos. People are moving out in droves. People are afraid to go out. People are staying inside. We're hearing stories about parents having to keep their children in the basement. They're just terrified with all the violence and the looting and the burning of buildings and the shootings, the large, sharp increase in shootings, by the way, in New York ever since the Special Investigations Unit was taken down by the just moronic mayor, Bill DeBlasio. And as you know, he has the no bail policy, which is just really hurting police. And we're hearing this all over. We're hearing it in Portland, and we've heard it in Seattle and Minneapolis, other places where police make an arrest. And then next thing you know, 6 hours later, a day later, the same Antifa or BLM members are right back out on the street, assaulting someone, robbing someone, knocking over some elderly lady who's walking down the street with her walker. Just evil, twisted things that most people would never dream of doing. I've got somebody that I want to bring on the show right now who's looking to solve those problems in New York. I want to welcome George Santos to the show, who is running for Congress out of U.S. District 3 for New York. He's U.S. House candidate and covers the Queens, Long Island area of New York. I want to welcome you to the show, George.
Hi, John. Thank you so much for having me. As I heard your intro there, wow, you nailed it all on the head.
Well, it's not something I'm proud to say, but unfortunately, we have to tell the truth. And on this show, we put God first. We tell the truth. So, you know, one of the things that caught my eye about your campaign is that I could tell right off the bat when I started looking over your materials that you had a lot of grit. You had a lot of drive and passion, and your statement here said it all. A new era of representation is coming to DC. And I just love that because that's forward-looking, and it's positive, and it's just the kind of thing that New York City needs right now.
You know, thank you for that. And amen. God comes first, and we tell the truth when God comes first, right?
Yes, sir.
And I think it's selective that, and since you brought up the name of God, our governor here says that in his own good Christian faith, he could never take somebody to the chair. But in his own good Christian Catholic faith, he approved and signed into law infanticide. Think about that, right?
Right.
An interesting double standard there. But the new era of representation, when I came up with that, it was 4 o'clock in the morning. Brainstorming how I can brand myself and people can understand what I was trying to say in a very limited amount of characters, as we know Twitter to be.
Sure.
You see, I hate the word leadership because you don't lead anybody. You represent them. You get to represent what the people want. And a lot of times I feel like people get lost in, I'm the leader. I'm the leader of nothing. You represent us. We pay you to represent our needs and what we want. And, you know, 80% of the time, whether Democrats or Republicans, they're out of touch with reality. So we need to make sure that we eliminate all these tone-deaf individuals, specifically in the Democratic Party. Not saying Republicans are perfect, but
no.
The Democratic Party seems to be so tone-deaf.
Yes.
And yeah, I think this will be catchy. And thank you for catching on to it.
Oh no, it's just the kind of thing New York needs right now. And I know that your opponent, Tom Swazi, I know he's been in the game 17 years and living on the taxpayer's dime. It's time to send him packing.
Well, you know, Tom Swazi is a career politician. Here's how I differentiate a politician from a actual, you know, representative or a person who is looking to engage in civil service, right? Politicians are in it for the money. Tom Swazi was mayor of Glen Cove for 2 terms, walked away with that pension. Tom Swazi was county executive of Nassau County, walked away with that pension. Now he's been in the House for 2 years and he's secured the pension of the House. Next thing we know, it's a big rumor, open secret here in New York that he wants to run for Senate. That's why he's raised so much money and isn't spending any of it. With that said, there goes another pension he's trying to collect. Your dime.
Jeez.
You know, so all the years he's been in office, and it's funny when I ask people, tell me one good thing Tom Swazi has done for the people of Long Island, and nobody seems to have one thing. He is the master of photo ops and awards. He awards everybody across the map. Congressional award for this, congressional recognition for that. That's great. Why haven't you cleaned up the Long Island Sound?
Right.
It's disgusting. You know, we're in the North Shore and the Long Island Sound is gross.
Yes.
Either to the brim, there's no real effort. Our electrical grid infrastructure is embarrassing. I mean, we had a storm here a couple of weeks back, and right during the storm, 430,000 people went out of power between Long Island and Queens. PSAGLI's response was supposed to be, we prepared and we shouldn't have any outages. Then it moved to, there were minor outages, minor transformers. In 72 hours, everything will be back in normal. That kept being pushed 24 hours back for a total of 12 days.
Wow.
So just up until 15 days after the storm, there were still about 10,000 people experiencing outages, although they were checked for back on. So Congressman Swazi doing to upgrade the infrastructure, the electrical grid in Long Island? It's failing. It's first world country with a third world electrical grid system. That's all.
Yeah, the infrastructure. By the way, just to reveal the truth, I used to live in New York City. I studied there for 3 years, lived in Brooklyn Heights. So I got to say this about this Swazi. This guy. I just had to say that. This guy. Who is this guy? You know what I mean? Get out of here.
Get out of here. No, I need Italian too.
By the way, to our audience, I want to let you know we've got, we're going to have George's information, his website, scrolling at the bottom, his Facebook, his Twitter handle, so that you can contact him. I highly recommend that you contact his website as well. Get involved, help his ground game, donate to the campaign, do what you can, make calls so that we can get George elected and get Swazi out of there. I noticed too, George, that the Coalition of Suffolk County Law Enforcement, they just endorsed you, back to blue candidate, and you were also endorsed as the pro-life candidate in NY3 by National Right to Life. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's humbling and it's an honor to receive the Coalition of Suffolk County. It's just, I never thought in my lifetime that supporting the police would become a partisan issue and that I'd have to stand here and fight for them in a political platform. I just can't believe it. And the Right to Life movement has always been very close to my heart. I am a big believer in eradicating abortion. Unless it is an extreme circumstance with proven police documentation, because nowadays you know, and to keep it very, you know, you sleep with your partner and you don't like, you know, you had a bad day and you wake up pregnant and like, I was raped. That's right. Used a little too loose. So if you're really going to claim rape, then take it to the authorities. And then with that, I don't believe a woman should bear a child of a rape or incest. I really don't. I don't wish that upon anybody. But if we're going to be serious about this, we need to press charges all the way.
Yes.
Documented proof in order to obtain that abortion. And of course, and then, you know, if the mom is, one life doesn't substitute the other. And if there is life risks imposing to the mother, then absolutely, I think, you know, we never trade lives.
No. And you know what? That's a common sense. That's a common sense. Just pure again. And I go to this all the time because in America, there's a lot of things missing, right? God's missing, but so is common sense. Okay. You know, who would have thunk it, right? It's like, you know, a common sense approach to just one matter, this being supposed rape. Okay. So I agree with you. If you're raped in that situation and the criminal, you take him to court and there's no plea bargains, the criminal pays the price. In that situation, I get it. But it's with abortion now. It's infanticide. It's James O'Keefe with Project Veritas. He busted him out in California with the baby parts scandal. This is after birth, by the way, and killing babies. And of course, Kamala Harris squashed it and went after James O'Keefe legally to stop him, which is just a disgrace, by the way.
To that point, I met James O'Keefe a couple of times now here in New York with some of his, speeches in some club circles prior to COVID, obviously. James, at one instance, it was so bad, he was walking around with a bulletproof vest.
Yeah.
There's people out there for him, especially with that Epstein story. He leaked it. He got that hot mic moment. So look, long story short, the truth always prevails.
Yes.
I can't foresee the American people believing in all the lies that the Democrats are pushing down their throats. I think that they're starting to wake up, and that silent majority is silent no more.
Yes.
What really makes me proud to be an American today is that I see that uproar of independence, that fight for liberty that we're known to be. We're the most resilient people on earth. And I am so proud to be running the cycle because this is the fight of our lives.
You couldn't have said it any better, George.
Every inch of our life, of our livelihood, of our way of life and our values. This is a Judeo-Christian nation, and we founded it with those values, and we're going to protect it.
Yes.
So I'm super honored and super just looking forward to serving the people of the 3rd Congressional District and the American people, because they need somebody who's going to go there and actually represent their values and fight for their children so that they can be afforded all the opportunities we were.
Yeah, and that's another thing I saw about you that I really loved is that you want to expand those opportunities to all Americans, right? Notice, and I love that because this isn't about race. This isn't about your religious background or this or that. You want to expand opportunity for all. And that's what America's about. And by the way, I want to say something because I know that your parents came here through legal immigration and came here from Brazil seeking the American dream. And I know that they're really proud of you, George.
Look, my mom, God rest her soul, she lost her fight to cancer in 2016. And
I'm so sorry.
It's every day it's a little challenging. I thought I'd get over it eventually, like everyone said. You'll get used to it. I don't think I'll ever get used to my mom being gone. My best friend.
No.
And she was my biggest cheerleader. I keep thinking if she were here now, I'd probably kill her of a heart attack with everything that I'm doing now. She'd probably go like, "Oh God, you're gonna kill me." My dad sits on the sideline. He's a very quiet cat. He doesn't like the spotlight. He's very timid in a sense. It's funny he's a big personality when he's in his family and safe space. Let's call it that way. But
right.
He does not like the limelight, and he looks at me and says, "I just don't know where you get it from. Your mom didn't. I don't like it." I'm like, I don't like the limelight, but if it takes the limelight to change, look, I have a niece. I have a little sister. I have a 16-year-old sister. I don't know if they're going to be afforded the same things that, I was and my middle sister was. I talk to her all the time. I'm like, we need to fight for Chloe and Julia because, Julia's 16 and Chloe's only 2. They're not going to be afforded all the privileges and advantages we were in this country.
Yeah.
Kids. And we're writing $2 trillion bills left and right. It's you,
Well, yeah, no, you bring up an interesting point. And let me hit on that for a minute. I have a buddy that we talk about this all the time. One of the things that the kids are going to miss that I had is I was born in the 60s. So when I grew up, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have, at least in our house, we didn't have cable TV. There were no computers. So as kids, we went outside and played, okay? We were healthy. We played sports, but we had to use our imagination. We had to use our brains. We learned. They taught American history in school. We said the Pledge of Allegiance. God was a part of our curriculum. It just right on down the line. And nowadays, these kids have all those technological advances, the cell phones, the computers, all that. And you can get two kids in the same room who supposedly want to talk to one another, and they won't actually talk to one another. They'll talk to each other with the phone. So it's a different world, George. It's definitely a different world.
I grew up in that cusp of, becoming more techie. I had a Super Nintendo growing up. I had a Nintendo too with the big cartridges, and you had to blow on them to make them work. I'm sure you remember that, John.
I do. I had the very first system. It was just one little dot here, one little dot here, and a ball. It was called Pong.
And you had to do this, right? To move. So, I grew up, I was born in the 80s. I was regretfully born on the last year of President Reagan's presidency in 88. I grew up in the 90s, right? So I did still have that play outside, use your imagination. Oh, let's play 007, pick up sticks from the ground. That's my gun. Fall down. But no, you didn't. I shot you. We had fun. Like we were kids. We played ball, played soccer, hopscotch, all the things that kids did.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a sidewalk with a hopscotch drawn on it in years. And kids don't know what that is anymore, So it really saddens me to see that we've taken God away, we've taken human interaction away, and we've made it this cold box of technology where these children are growing up more socially awkward because they don't have that human experience, and they're growing up without any real values unless that the parents are really reinforcing it at home. But school doesn't give them an ounce of, God. I'm not enforce a specific religion. I went to public school, so we just had to use the term God loosely, like God. You couldn't say, what God? You just said God. Because, they were believers of Allah, of, Ganesh and Jesus Christ. And, oh, my God, it was, and then there was all the saints. So we just had to stay very neutral because public school is a public school. And still, we were able to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Actually, I'm from the time where we still sang the anthem. And then they decided to go in with the Pledge of Allegiance in the late 90s. But up until 99 or so, it was a full national anthem every morning.
Yeah.
And the Pledge of Allegiance became a little bit more mainstream, at least in my school, after the 90s. And then we started doing the pledge.
Yeah, the schools, they've really become liberal indoctrination centers. And what's sad is we've known for several years that our college campuses are that way. What I think a lot of parents are stunned by, and they're finding out now, and actually it was this virus keeping people at home that allowed them to find out and learn more things that they weren't able to maybe dig into because parents were busy at work and kids were at school and all that under normal circumstances. But, I'll give you an example. Out in Los Angeles,
God bless you.
Yeah, out in Los Angeles, I tell you what they did. They started sending these waivers to parents, making them agree not to watch their kids doing online instruction. And we found out that the reason they didn't want them to know is because they didn't want the parents to find out that their kids are being indoctrinated. And they also didn't want the parents to find out that BLM is now involved in the curriculum instruction with the teachers' unions. For instance, they're introducing a book called White Fragility into schools, which teaches kids that white kids are bad and that you need to shame the white kids in front of the black kids. It's completely racist. It's Marxist. It's sick. And look, all I can tell you is it's happening at the elementary school level, and parents need to wake up across the country.
John, the New York State curriculum leaked here on a Google Docs a couple of weeks ago. I'm like every other nosy busybody, I found it and I read it. And my eyes were bleeding. I instantly called my sister and said, when Chloe, my niece, is ready to go to school, I will squeeze money out of rocks, but she's not going to go to the New York State public school system because teaching Black Lives Matter, Marxism as a good thing. They're denouncing capitalism. And here's the deal. We're going to have the first segregated dorm in New York University starting January next year for all, quote unquote, as the article read, colored students.
Yeah.
Really going backwards. As I said, Martin Luther King did not die for this.
No.
That man fought hard to go away from this. John Lewis just passed. That man was honorable in protesting. I might have disagreed with his agenda, but his story was one very powerful. And so was Elijah Cummings and Martin Luther King Jr. To see all their hard work be rolled back, and these people are calling for segregation, is absolute scary. I do not know what to say. I find myself short of words. They're using the term colored again.
Yeah. Oh,
Is really where we want to go?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people still alive that went through segregation. They know what that was like.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of people don't realize this, and again, probably part of it's because of American history being taken out of schools, but we know the truth because I've studied this inside and out. It was the Democratic Party that voted against the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. It was the Democratic Party that was the party of the KKK, Jim Crow. Thank God we have people like Thomas Sowell, Bob Woodson, who are out there fighting against their black brothers with knowledge, with truth about these matters. But you're right, and I had a lot of respect for definitely Martin Luther King, but people like John Lewis and Elijah Cummings, they didn't fall from the same tree that Martin Luther King fell from, especially with the way that they tried to issue the message. In a lot of ways, they were pushing this racial division, and they did a lot of damage along with Barack Obama and Joe Biden. I want to say,
well, just to interject there, I'm talking more so the John Lewis of the 60s and the Elijah Cumming of the 60s, not the modern version, more, I don't know where they went. I was talking about the peaceful protesting and advocating for equality and abolishing of segregation. Those, that era of John Lewis and Elijah Cummings.
Yeah, back then, they were different people. Now, they're different people, and it's just sad. I wanted to ask you about Cuomo, DeBlasio. They are just wreaking havoc on the state with taxes that are killing people. The taxes were bad enough without the virus, without the riots and the looting and the rise in murder and shootings. I mean, the taxes were already driving people out. Now you've got DeBlasio sitting there, and I just saw the other day, on top of the no bail policy and on top of his just silly overall policies on, taking out the special investigations unit, not bringing in a new recruiting class of police officers. On top of all that, now he says that we need to redistribute the wealth. Okay? I'm sure you saw that. And all he's doing is driving people away.
Bill de Blasio is U-Haul's #1 salesman of the year. He is going to get an award. U-Haul should cut him a check. There should be a very nice check and send it. I have never seen so many U-Haul. Actually, I needed a U-Haul van just to move something from one property of mine to another. Just furniture, just simple stuff. I couldn't get one.
No.
It took me 3 days on going on the website and fighting to get a reservation in for a van.
How much did it cost you?
$19, don't get me wrong, and then
Okay.
25 a mile, but 3 days for a van? I said, Jesus, they're busy. You go by any U-Haul lot, it's either full of people moving into the storage units, or if it's just deserted, you'll see maybe a truck here and there. And I live not too far, probably 10, 15 minutes away from a huge U-Haul facility in Flushing, which is near to Whitestone, where I reside. And it's just massive. And to not have a truck or van there, I think they park there about 60 vehicles, and they're all gone every day. I'm not necessarily saying these people are moving from the state, but they're moving from the city into the island. That's for sure.
Well, I'll tell you right now, I bet you that you're going to see a sharp uptick in the prices, and I'm going to tell you why. If you try to rent a U-Haul in San Francisco to go somewhere else, it's thousands of dollars. Thousands. Okay? Now, if you wanted to rent a U-Haul from Ohio or Montana or Kentucky and go to San Francisco, it's normal prices. But people are leaving in droves, and they have been from California, because California really started killing their citizens way before New York did. New York's just a little bit behind, but thanks to DeBlasio, he's trying to catch them up quick. But California's been going on in California for a long time, and you can't rent a U-Haul. I mean, most people can't even afford to move. That's how bad it is out there. It's crazy.
It's look, taking your U-Haul truck out of New York is expensive, but when you're doing it inside, I guess it's cheaper, right? To your point, they don't want the cars leaving because they can't get them back fast enough.
That's right.
Like I said, DeBlasio should be cut a check. Cuomo should be cut a check. Cuomo should, in fact, be cut a check to use to pay for his bail, because he should be arrested first, right?
Yes, he should.
There's no bail reform, so then there's no bail reform, so he'll probably pocket the check. But I think he should use it as restitution to all the families of the victims of the nursing homes of his atrocious executive order that led into what we saw was the largest nursing home slaughter in the country, right? Yeah. I think California is catching up, but not as nearly as fast, because you have to be real special to do something so horrendous. And I think that's pretty much who Governor Cuomo is. And look, during the pandemic, I don't know if it was when I was positive of corona, I was a little out of it, but I did give him some praise. There were points of his time during the COVID response, he was really good. But then I sit back now in hindsight and think, even a broken clock's right twice a day. So it was just one of those two moments that he said something that made sense. He's been now trying to shift the blame of all his atrocious devastation to the state and DeBlasio's to the city, and pointed to the president. Donald Trump cannot be blamed for 40% vacancy of retail storefronts in Manhattan and the 27,000 rental units that are empty. That is a direct effect of poor local management. So they better suck up and fix it, because Manhattan is sinking, and sinking fast.
Yeah, and by the way, to that point, I'm glad you brought up the nursing homes, the assisted living facilities that Cuomo was in charge of, because that was a disaster, number one, like you said. And number two, it's interesting, tape doesn't lie, right? And we have Andrew Cuomo on tape, on live television at a press conference, praising President Trump for delivering everything that he asked. The ventilators, President Trump brought in, they built hospital. Franklin Graham came in, built one in Central Park. President Trump brought in 2 huge ships, and Cuomo didn't use them. DeBlasio didn't use them. I mean, this guy, okay, and then he goes on TV. This is after that. So he first praises the president for delivering everything he asked for. Then he goes on the DNC and says the president did nothing. And he blamed the president, just like you said. And he's been blaming the president all week long. And yesterday he comes out and says, we don't want Donald Trump in New York. He's going to have an army with him to walk on these streets. Nobody wants him here.
Here's the problem. I don't understand how can an elected governor of the United States of America to represent the great state of New York gets away with threatening the president of the United States' well-being if he comes to his home state. And for him to say that the best thing he did for New York was to leave, that's also something I think a lot of New Yorkers are thinking, Cuomo, when are you moving? You should move to California.
Yes.
Right about time. I feel bad for all my conservative friends in California. I know that there's a really strong pocket of people there who really are fed up with the status quo of Gavin Newsom and Nancy Pelosi and the rest of them. But unfortunately, until we can show and educate the people of California, I feel like hope is lost for the California state.
Yeah, no, George, you're absolutely
California. Sorry.
You're absolutely right. Now, I will say this. I've had on 5 different congressional candidates running out there. And so I've got my nose to the ground out there as to what's going on. And everybody seems to be pretty optimistic that that their constituents are telling them they're going to change their vote this time. So maybe not all of them, but maybe some of them will turn red this election cycle. I guess we'll see. But you're right. A re-education needs to happen out there because a lot of these people they don't realize that the way that they vote and not doing the research to find out what they're voting for, who they're voting for, what they stand for, they don't realize they're only hurting themselves in the long run, you know?
Well, it's that old story, right? Oh, please, I'll fix it. I know how to fix it. This time I'll get it right. But he doesn't know how to do it. He's going to ruin it. And that's when you look at their record, 32 years, 40 years, 46 years. But this time we'll make it right.
Right.
Get it right in 4 decades. Come back. Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden have served collectively over 100 years in Congress, and they haven't fixed the problem with inner cities, with America, with the minorities. I mean, Latinos, Asians. They haven't done anything for these communities.
No.
All they did was elect a radical Islamic jihadist in Minnesota who tried to de-escalate 9/11 to some people did something.
That's right.
Sorry, sister, don't come to New York. You're not going to be well received.
No.
We know what 9/11 was. It was way beyond some people did something. That's really all the Democrats have managed to do is elect a jihadist to Congress.
Yeah. And she's not the only one. Tlaib, AOC, Presley, they're all in it together. And by the way, you mentioned Omar in Minnesota. She's got a Islamic jihadist AG in that state, Keith Ellison, and he's a scumbag, as you know. But that's all right. We're going to move on to some positive stuff.
Yeah, positive.
Yeah. I talked about the taxes in New York. Anybody who's a New Yorker knows you're getting killed with taxes. Do you really want to pay more? I mean, really? Please ask yourself, because I want to know.
The solution to a balanced budget isn't overtaxation. It's deregulation and job creation.
Yes.
You fix a deficit. If people are under the impression that just raising taxes is the way to go, they're chronically going to kill the middle class, raising taxes on them, putting them into the poverty line, which then they'll need governmental assistance, which will be more dollars spent of the taxpayer. So you're creating a vicious cycle. You need to regulate and expand job creation. Make incentives. Let Amazon come here, create 26,000 jobs. Give them $3 billion in tax credits. You know why? We'll make tenfold that money in taxes from the 26,000 employees.
Yeah.
People with bogus economic degrees, such as AOC, and lawyers such as Tom Swazi, don't understand economic growth.
No.
To do so,
no.
Equipped to understand what the freaking city and country needs.
Well, you look at us, and I'll tell you what, I'm going to use this example because it's indicative of the country right now. Take a city like Baltimore. Okay, I use the example because they had 13 schools. This is dealing with the education system, which the Democrats always want to pour more money into, right? More money, more taxes, same deal. But here's the deal. In Baltimore, they had 13 schools that not one student out of 13 schools was proficient in math or English. A big fat zero.
What math are they learning? Is it Common Core?
They're indoctrinating them. That's what they're doing. That's what's happening. It's
you know, it's funny. I'm an economics major. I work in finance for 11 years, and I can't do second graders' homework in math. I don't know how to do Common Core math, and I've tried to help, and hey, I'm sorry.
No thanks.
Florida rid itself of Common Core. I can't wait for New York to do the same, but for that, we need to rid ourselves of the communist socialist governor that we have up in Albany, and we need to take back the majority in the state Senate, because this state right now, I had lunch today with a couple that's very good friends of mine, and the missus asked me, how do we fix all this bias? How can Cuomo and DeBlasio go by unchecked? I said, they don't. We have no checks and balances. It's a one-party state rule. And unfortunately, until we fix that, there's just no checks and balances. Even Democrats are starting to realize that just a one-sided narrative and an argument is boring, and it is not beneficial to their livelihood. So I can't foresee, you know, the middle-class family that are Democrats, you know, because they're union workers and those are the values they cherish and whatnot. But they're not the party of prostitution and gangbanging. And right. The party is becoming, you know, they're talking about legalizing street walking back in New York and making it legal to solicit for, you know, that kind of work. So do we not remember the 1980s and Dave Dinkins in New York City's red light district in Times Square?
Exactly.
Are we rolling back? I almost feel like they're doing this because they want to have another Giuliani-like mayor. You know, they want to see a Republican come in because they know the Democrats sure can't fix it. So they're like, let's make it as bad as possible.
Yeah.
People vote a Republican and let them figure it out.
Well, I tell you what, George, you know it's bad when we know about the no bail and all that. And that's all bad. That's terrible. But you know it's really gotten out of control when Bill DeBlasio says that it's legal for me to walk with my little 5-year-old daughter, let's say, or you walk with your 16-year-old sister down the street and some idiot decides he wants to defecate in the middle of the road and he doesn't get arrested. That's when you know where we are.
Yeah.
You know?
Visuals weren't pleasant there, John.
Sorry. Let's move on. I know that you're a huge proponent of free speech, religious liberty, veterans affairs, veterans rights, the homeless crisis. That's a big thing on your heart. Same here. We have a men's ministry under our Prelude Pictures. I'm vice president of Prelude Pictures, and our publishing division, Prelude Publishing, has a men's ministry called the First Hour for Men, and we're going to be utilizing that men's ministry, this 30-day study into President Trump's opportunity zones to try to get God back into these inner cities using this 30-day challenge that our men's ministry does. So, and I'm also a veteran. I'm a military veteran. So my pleasure. But I just want to let you know, I applaud you for having that as one of your top, you know, agenda items and things that are close to your heart. I know it means a lot to you. I know that immigration the story of your parents and look at you. Look at you. You're a success story. Your parents came here seeking the American dream. And you know what? Look at their son. Their son is running for Congress. And I got to tell you, that's a huge deal. And that's something you should be proud of.
I say that enough. My parents came here in search of the American dream, and I'm the embodiment of that accomplishment. Real quick, and first of all, thank you for your service. And look, I never enlisted. I never tried. I don't pretend to say, no, I never enlisted. It wasn't for me. I thought of it. I looked at it. I read the application. I did thorough research. Said, not for me. Well, in other ways I can in society, but this isn't for me. And I'm not embarrassed to admit it. You just have to accept who you are and what you can and can't do. There's no shame in being honest.
Sure.
I said, yeah, being a cop, being a soldier, it's just not in the books, not in the cards for me.
I changed up, George. I had a buddy in high school. We decided we were going to go in on the buddy system in the Marines, and he backed out on me at the last second. And so I had to make a decision. Am I going to still go into the Marines? I was getting offers from the Air Force. So I went and took a test for the Air Force, and I got really high scores, and they offered me, and I ended up signing with the Air Force.
Oh, very nice.
So I actually changed up. Instead of going, one of my brothers is a Marine, and I've got friends that are Marines. So it's not like I'm missing out. I know what went on.
Interesting. So anyway, what I usually tell people is people like me, they just don't get to do what I'm doing. I come essentially from nothing. I come from a middle-class family who migrated here in search of a dream. They attained that dream. I fought hard and I worked hard. My mom rose in the ranks at her job and was an executive with Citigroup for many years. My father is the hardest working man you'll ever find. I'm not diminishing anyone's work ethics, but my father's up at 4:00 in the morning every day till this day. He's 55 years old and still wakes up at 4:00, goes to the work site, makes sure everything is up in shape, works. And when he needs to get his hands dirty, you'll see the man roll up his sleeves, put on a mask, and paint walls.
God bless him.
For a living, he's higher up in the ranks in his company, but he still paints. He doesn't care. He's proud of it. And I remember as a kid, my dad would show up at home all covered in like paint specks on his hair and on his clothes. He'd wash up, and I'd say, "Dad, aren't you embarrassed?" He's like, "No, I'm not stealing. I'm working."
That's right. That's right. God bless him.
He would say, "You should be embarrassed if your dad ever shows up arrested." And I said, "Well, cool." So I was never ashamed of my father. Sometimes he was too tired some days to change into regular clothes. He just do it, put his backpack on his bag and come home with the paint attire, as we called it. My mom would look at him and say, "You look a fright." He's like, "I'm tired." So I grew up with, I'm not embarrassed,
No.
Who you are and where you come from. And the simple fact that as a middle-class American, I'm here today, first-generation born American running for U.S. Congress, expecting and hoping to represent the people with a common sense voice. I feel humbled and very, very inundated with joy that I'm granted this opportunity. And this is proof that the American dream is very much alive.
Yeah, and you're a wonderful, shining example of that, and you have a lot to be proud of. Your parents do. I know your mom's looking down on you in heaven right now, and she's smiling. I lost my dad like 5 years ago. My mom's still here. We almost lost her. She had a brain aneurysm a couple years ago, but thankfully she pulled through and recovered. And she retired from teaching, but we did lose my dad. So I know what it's like to lose a parent. I know that when I lose my mom, when that eventually happens, that's going to, I mean, both parents, they mean so much to you in so many different ways, but there's obviously a certain biological bond with mom.
We're boys.
Yeah.
Boys.
That's right.
There's no shame in admitting that, John.
No shame, brother.
There's no shame. And girls are daddy's little girls. I mean, it is what it is.
That's right. I wanted to touch on free speech for a second, and the silencing of conservatives, not just on college campus. As you know, it's been bleeding everywhere now. A friend of mine, Mark Joseph, he produced a movie called No Safe Spaces. It was a documentary with Adam Carolla and Chris
I
Prager.
went to the premiere here in New York City at Bryant Park.
Great.
I'm very good friends with DeRoy Murdoch, and he was very involved with the project.
You tell Delroy I want to talk to him. I love that guy.
He doesn't have a cell phone. So
that's okay. That's all right.
Yeah, call his landline or email him.
I tell him, ask him if it's okay if you give him my contact information. I'd love to have him on the show. Great guy. But no, it's interesting because that same producer, Mark Joseph, he's getting ready to start shooting Reagan, which is a motion picture, not a documentary. And that starts filming in a couple weeks down in Oklahoma. So, but free speech is something that it's one of those rights that we have that, again, we're losing. It's like in Virginia with the Second Amendment, you've got Northam, the guy who is put on blackface and it's just a real creature who wants to lecture us about the Second Amendment. Okay, I don't know how New Yorkers feel today. What do your constituents tell you about issues like free speech, the Second Amendment?
Second Amendment is something that's very gray in New York State. I'm pro Second Amendment. I'm pro Constitution. I believe in the Constitution and the powers that it obtains, and it's a living, breathing document.
Yes.
Second Amendment is there to protect us from tyrannical government. And I believe if we had a little bit more liberty with our Second Amendment here in the state, I highly doubt that Governor Cuomo would get away with half of what he's doing.
Good point.
I really doubt. But they designed it in a way where they rid us of our guns and our liberties, and now they took over us. And all hail King Cuomo up in Albany, and he's shutting down liquor licenses of businesses who are over exceeding the capacity of 50% in their restaurants. I mean, he's destroying the state up and down, and he's really not leading or representing. He's ruling amongst us, and
he is.
Thought that we're silent, but then again, we can't take up arms against tyrannical government because we barely have any guns in the state. Right? I'm not saying to shoot the guy, but I'm just saying to show force.
Sure.
Knock it off, tone it down. We, the people, do not agree. Figure something else out.
Yeah.
I'm saying, I'm not insinuating like Swazi insinuated we shoot the president.
Sure. Right. Exactly.
I'll share that video with you of when he said that too.
Please do.
Yeah, the Second Amendment should be used against the president.
By the way, that's the reason why people aren't allowed to have guns, because this was all part of the agenda, and they wanted to set New York up this way so they couldn't do anything. And by the way, people and people like Como and DeBlasio have bodyguards, and they're armed.
They use the NYPD here in New York. DeBlasio, uses the NYPD to do his detail. And the arm, he goes and defunds them. It's just like, what?
Oh my gosh, who is this guy?
It's like, you don't need the police. You're protected. Get your Antifa guys. And look, here's how the free speech. That was the question. I don't want to deviate too much from that. I believe it's a two-way street. If they're going to deem we're saying hate, then they should really look at what they're spewing. So if we're going to go and play the free speech card, then social media giants like Facebook, Instagram, Facebook owns Instagram,
sure.
Twitter, these guys need to stop censoring conservative voices.
Yes.
Whenever you see a conservative voice trending, they go ahead and figure out the algorithm and dumps it all the way to the bottom or just eliminates it. But when they see hatred, for instance, when Fred Trump passed, the hashtag wrong Trump on Twitter.
I saw that.
Twitter did not censor that?
No.
But when we try to trend things like lock her up, we get banned.
Right.
For real, banned.
Yeah.
The gentleman here in New York, very active, he's a gay Republican conservative. His name is Mike Harlow. He was banned from Twitter for no reason whatsoever.
I saw that.
Has begged and campaigned outside Twitter headquarters in Manhattan to no avail. They just won't give him a reason why they banned him. They called him a radical. The poor guy lives in Queens. He's like the nicest person you'll ever meet. You know, he speaks his mind and he's very vocal, but he doesn't say a single inch of hatred. And now in DC, his walkaway founder were attacked by Antifa thugs as they were exiting the RNC closing night acceptance speech event. And nobody says anything.
Yeah, yeah.
It's nothing. You know why he was eliminated and banned from social media?
No, I don't.
Because he was reaching a lot of people.
There you go.
He had a huge reach on Twitter, and he was making people actually think. And that's a no-no.
That's a no-no. They don't want that, do they, George?
No. Independent thinking is a no-no.
Well, I saw that Zuckerberg came out with a statement this week that 10 days prior to the election, number one, they're not going to allow any ads that weren't already
new ads.
Right, new ads that weren't already running.
Yes.
And that they're going to be cracking down, you know, from now until the election on political speech. And you know who that's going to mean that they're coming after, right? It's not going to be the Democrats.
Conservatives and Republicans. If you have a C or an R next to your name, be prepared to speak to yourself in an enormous echo chamber.
Yeah.
Outside.
These people are just unreal. I want to move on. We've got about a little under 8 minutes left. I wanted to talk to you real quick about the fatherless crisis. And the reason I wanted to talk about that is because it's really a crisis now. Give you an example. In the Black community, 74% of Black homes do not have a father. So that's 3 out of every 4 homes. And then we turn on our TV and see what we're seeing. It's no surprise. And that's why we've got to get God back into this. White community, it's closing in on 40%. Hispanic community, about the same. But if you looked at those figures back in the 50s and 60s, they were all under 3%. So they've expanded and exploded in this new world. And I guess people just, you know, get women pregnant and take off, or maybe the woman takes off. But we're losing family, the family structure, the nuclear family. And the left is now trying to remove it in other ways. You know, they did enough damage with the Great Society. I mean,
well, look at it this way, John. The family unit's been under attack for decades.
Yeah.
Look, in different ways, right? In different ways. The flavor of the decade is same-sex couples. Oh, that's so okay. It's look, to each your own. I don't have anything against that, but they're teaching in school kids, you know, that you don't need a mommy and a daddy. You can have 2 mommies. You can have 2 daddies. I think that's a little much for kids, right?
It's not their place.
And that's an attack on the family unit in the sense where they're just making excuses and reasoning to explain to kids why there's only one mommy or why there's only daddy, you know, and there's no other person, that it's okay to be like that that's your unique type family. I want to go back in time and think, why would it be bad for minorities in general? And that includes me, right? But why would it be bad for us to have a mom, a dad in the same household, your little brothers and sisters, you know? And then I keep thinking, because then that creates stability. And stability raises good individuals who are independent thinkers.
Yes.
When you have instability in the family unit, you reap havoc. One parent can't parent 2 kids as well as 2 parents. And there's always that feminine touch to boys from the mother and that masculine touch to boys from the father. Same thing goes for the daughters, and it creates equilibrium and balance.
Yes.
scales are tipped and there's nobody left there and you have just one-sided, you start creating troubled individuals. Troubled individuals are easier to manipulate and indoctrinate, and they buy pretty much anything and drink any Kool-Aid you give them. So that's why destroying the family unit has given the ability to eliminate the masses of free thinkers. And they make people believe, these women believe in most cases, that you don't need a man. Why do you need a man? We'll give you more money if you have no father. Each child will be worth more money if you have no father in the house. So that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's where we stand.
Yeah, it's really sick and twisted. It's sad. I real quick. I wanted to touch on immigration. I know that that's a big thing on your priority list, and we see sanctuary cities now. We see the Democrats, they want to give illegals free everything, free attorneys, free healthcare, a free ride, and no consequences. And it really bothers me because we have, anywhere from 700,000 to 900,000 people who come here every year legally. They do it the right way. And those people, they end up respecting our country. They end up integrating and doing it the right way. And we have all these illegals, and there's none of that. And I know that it's affecting New York in a tough way.
Well, the way I look at it, illegal immigration is a really sensitive topic in today's day and age. I have a very different approach to how we can resolve it, less conventional and more so in a negotiation state. I take DACA, for instance, a very unpopular stance of mine on DACA that a lot of people look at me and say, well, that's not very conservative, that's very liberal of you. And I say, essentially, it's not that it's liberal of me, it's more so of the fact that I'm a New York conservative, I'm fiscally conservative, I've grown up to be accepting of thy neighbor. I've grown up to understand diversity. And I know that that's not something that's afforded to every single aspect of this country. So I look at DACA as an opportunity for us to embrace these 800 somewhat thousand people who have been essentially, when they arrived here as children and they're young adults today, some of them in their 30s or whatever the limits were. I don't think that they're menaces to society. They've been contributing with taxes. We spent millions of dollars in establishing them into that program. I think it would be a dishonor and a waste of our resources to just shove them back into the shadows. Because anybody who thinks we can deliberately deport all of them is terribly mistaken.
Let me ask you a quick question. Let's say that we did that. Let's say we went with your plan. Can we agree that once we do that, that's it, that we're not going to keep doing this? Because as you know, if you only have this much money, you can't feed this many people. In other words, the numbers just don't add up.
They don't, yeah.
So we have to put a stop on it at some point. Or
it definitely is a cap. And I've even gone to the extent of saying if any DACA recipient has any misdemeanors or even felonies under their belts, they too will not be afforded any further benefits. I think
that's fair.
The one's worthwhile,
That's fair. That's fair. Real quick, I wanted to touch on one other item that I knew was on your list: the environment. And I was pleased to see that, because Republicans, conservatives often get pegged as people that don't care about the environment. I care about the environment. You care about the environment. Do you want to add anything? We got about 30 seconds left.
I believe in climate cycle. I believe in respecting nature. I do not believe in the doomsday theory of global warming and that we're all going to die in a big flood. And neither does Barack Obama and any of the liberals, or else he wouldn't have bought a multi-million-dollar mansion lying on the riverfront in North. How about that?
Good point, George. Good point. Listen, I want to thank you for coming on the show today. I hope that you'll, number one, keep us informed on how your race is going. We really want you to win and take out Swazi He's got to go. I think you'd be a wonderful representative for New York and District 3. And so keep us informed. Do you have any events coming up? Anything?
The event calendar is pretty quiet. We're just doing a lot of door knocking and a lot of canvassing.
Okay.
Few private fundraisers here and there, nothing too elaborate. And we're observing social distancing. So,
good.
Not a good year for big events.
No, but as long as you're door knocking, you got a ground game going. That's where the money is anyway. You got a door knock. It's a ground game. Again, just keep us informed. Everybody, again, I want to make sure that you see this. I'm sure you have at the bottom of the screen. We've got GeorgeForNewYork.com and on Twitter at Santos for Congress and Facebook, George Santos for Congress NY3. So make sure that you get in touch with George, his campaign, and do anything that you can to contribute. And let's get Swazi out of there and get George in. We need him. Thanks for joining us, America. We'll see you next week, where our first guest of the week will be Carter Page. Until then, God bless you. And thanks for joining us on Indivisible.